Barbara Gaston, a financial analyst for one of the country's mid-sized investment and pension companies, sat in her office, irritated, her mind racing between the Excel spreadsheet she was reluctantly working on and the clock she kept glancing at. She felt especially tense and nervous all day. Time didn't matter because she was just waiting for the last person in the company besides her to go home, except for the two guys in the computer room on the floor below. The clock showed 5:50, and her flexible schedule meant she worked from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., avoiding traffic jams on the way there and back. The one big benefit of the flexible schedule was that she could spend about an hour in the computer room talking to the two evening shift technicians after the employees left the office. These meetings always took place after her tasks were completed, and sometimes she and the two technicians would have sex. The flexible schedule also allowed her to spend the mornings carpooling and caring for her 8- and 10-year-old children, while her husband did the same in the afternoons. His job at a commercial bakery started at 6 a.m. and ended at 3 p.m., so taking care of the kids in the afternoon was his responsibility, which saved her from having to think about them. This ideal agreement has been going on for a long time. Barbara was not a beautiful woman, but she knows how to dress well, as she gloomily recalled hearing her husband once describe her at a neighbor's party. Moreover, she was plain, but she had beautiful breasts. Secretly, part of her even wanted to miraculously get a promotion in the department. She was naturally slender, although she had a large appetite for gourmet food. Remembering her past, she became a party girl in her first 2 years of college. Shortly after starting her third year, she fell madly and hopelessly in love with one of the tutors named Hap, whom she used in her second year. He began coming to her unannounced to have sex on his own, which was never enough for Barbara for over a year, and was available to her before every important exam in exchange for it. He laughingly described these sessions to his friends as double preparation sessions. For Hap, who considered himself the perfect man, this was the perfect agreement. One night after they had finished studying for an important exam for the first time, Barbara, always ready to get down to business, tried to get Hap into her bed. The tutor said, "Not today, Barbara. I have other plans and I have to go. And by the way, you need to find another tutor. I met someone. Please don't call me again." She was severely injured and depressed for 2 months. In an instant, she was experiencing the worst day of her life to that point, trying to contain her emotions of being abandoned again. There were no more sessions to pay for tutoring, so she soon gave up and began spending long hours studying course material on her own. After a week or so, she was in a bad mood and doubted whether she would be able to take an important exam the next day. So she had a tearful phone call with her mother and then wondered, should I drop out of the course, drop out of college, or something else? Barbara then said to herself as she looked in the mirror, "You're an ugly duckling and none of the guys are interested in you except for sex, and college just isn't for you." Then she hit the table and silently screamed, "No, I can succeed in college, I can have a career and a man who loves me, and I sure as hell won't settle for anything less." She spent the rest of the night cramming and passed the exam with a C+, eventually earning a B for the course. This success gave her the energy to barely finish her economics degree in her final 2 years. She achieved this by stopping drinking and having sex with multiple guys on the same day. All her energy was focused on improving her GPA at Boston University. In fact, she met her future husband, Henry Gaston, in the university library. He was about to graduate from the hotel service program the same year as Barbara. Henry's plan for completing his degree was similar to sports medicine and attracted certain types of people that I won't elaborate on here. He was also considered stupid and boring. But he was handsome, he looked sexy, and he was a good Christian, except that he was often seduced. He was over 6 feet tall and wore size 16 shoes, which was immediately noticeable when he passed by on his boats. Henry and Barbara's meeting in the library was different. He was sitting at his desk typing out an essay for an assignment when she sat down across from him and began studying. Over time, the library became empty, and this became the reason for their conversation. After some time, the work stopped and communication began. Later, Henry said, "Barbara, please watch my computer while I go to the restroom." She nodded without looking up from her work. As Henry was returning, Barbara glanced at his feet and noticed that he was walking on snowshoes or boats due to his large feet. When Henry sat down, she did not allow either him or herself to return to work, and a serious conversation began. After the usual topics, she lied, "I'm very good at macros on spreadsheets, mainly because I had good tutors. I hope to get a job as a financial analyst here in the city next year. Considering that the real estate market is hot right now, I am confident that good job opportunities await me." Henry replied, "Great. I don't know yet what I want to do after graduation, but I'll probably start with management, since I was pretty good at managing photoshops during high school." Thus began their relationship as they walked out of the library on that fateful day holding hands. As they chatted, Barbara thought to herself, "Damn it, I like the thought of sleeping with him. But wait, why don't I play hard to get and try to make him my permanent lover? Henry, on the other hand, thought, "She's ugly and homely, but she has that look about her, like she wants sex. Part of me says, get on with it. The other part says, forget it, it's not charity week. But in any case, I need to finish this important study in order to pass the course. But maybe later, if the mood lifts." They walked up to the lobby of her dorm and Barbara said, "Please put your number in my phone so I can save it. Maybe we can do this again sometime." Henry replied, "Gladly, call anytime," with a big smile on his face. He shook her hand warmly and continued, "Farewell, and thank you for the only fantastic day in the library ever." Their relationship began to take off, but it took a full month before they slept together for the first time in Henry's off-campus apartment. "Wow, sorry, Henry, I know where you will live in the future, and it will be with me." Her lover thought, "Damn it, she's terribly ugly, but she's great in bed." They soon stopped using protection and started dating until she accidentally got pregnant, and then they got married. 9 years and 2 children later, the magic had worn off, and the bills continued to pile up as they lived on the edge of their shared incomes in the suburbs in a big house, making heavy payments on their mortgage that was underwater. Henry became the shift manager for the morning loading and dispatch of baked goods trucks. Starting out as a driver in a training program, he quickly received 2 major promotions. His future looked bright as he was well-liked and was particularly good as a supervisor in a factory where relations between workers were often tense. Barbara began playing with 2 evening shift technicians in the computer room of her office in Boston's financial district about 3 months after she started working for the company. Life was good. The tech lovers were mediocre, but it allowed her to have little adventures on the side without muddying the waters at home or in the office. Since no one knew about it, this only happened after all the employees left work. She always initiated sex in the computer room and did it when her stress during the workday was very high. Barbara usually returned home around 8:30. She went into the children's room to chat and read a story while Henry warmed up dinner for her and set the table. She would sit down and they would discuss their days and children. They usually had sex on Saturday mornings, and Henry began to notice that her behavior had changed. Henry was not the most insightful person, but he concluded, "Something is wrong. Damn it. Crap. She doesn't go to happy hours, doesn't have close friends at work, and doesn't have bachelorette parties, and our friends are family people, so there can't be any cheating. So what's going on?" Henry was very concerned and went to meet the pastor. After about 10 minutes of explanation, the pastor said, "A possible reason for your estrangement could be that you don't have any money left over after paying your bills every month, and maybe she's just worried about that. Maybe that's it, Henry." "Yes, Brother Jones, you're probably right. You know that she stopped going to church, although I always bring the children to Sunday school. I really hope that she will find the strength to make an appointment with you. Do you think it will help if I invite her to go to the next meeting together?" No, she was pretty negative about religion the last time I talked to her, but it wouldn't hurt to ask her now, Henry. After about 15 more minutes of conversation, Henry said goodbye and left. When he returned home, Barbara was in the kitchen as usual on a Saturday afternoon, and Henry hugged her from behind in greeting. She said, "Damn it, Henry, you're stopping me from preparing a special dish for our dinner. We already did this morning, remember?" At this point, the husband was furious, but he restrained himself and calmly said, "We have a problem, Barbara, and could we go to Reverend Jones together to try to solve it?" She turned to him in rage. "What's the problem? You're just too sensitive. We need to provide housing for our children, and we can barely cope. So what's bothering you today?" "Barbara, why do you say such things with such a sarcastic tone? You know I don't like this expression, and I love you. You haven't told me this in over a year. What's wrong?" She seemed to calm down a little and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, dear husband. You just know that we have almost no money left, and everything is so stressful, and I'm under pressure at work. I promise I will try better." Henry restrained himself and pretended to be meek, although she still did not answer the important question. "I guess so. I'm sorry to bother you, and talking to the pastor won't help our financial situation." Returning to the garage, where he was working on some project, the husband noticed that on some days Barbara applied her makeup especially carefully and looked her best when she came home in the evening. He did not see her in the morning. But her salary did not decrease, and her paycheck did not indicate sick leave, which he did not know about. He also noticed that her dressing up happened randomly, but never when she had women's days, so he decided to look for a way to check everything. The following Tuesday, the union leader invited Henry to have a beer with him at South Station, where he was changing trains to go home. Henry's mother agreed to pick up the children from school, feed them, and put them to bed. His mother arrived at their house around 2:30, and after talking with her son for a while, she dropped him off at the station on her way to pick up her grandchildren. Henry arrived at South Station around 4 o'clock and met with the union leader. After a long and friendly conversation, he noticed a street seller who was selling a dozen roses cheaply and bought them. It was nearly 6 when he walked north along Atlantic Avenue toward the street where Barbara's office building stood. It was 6:27 when he entered the building through the revolving door. A giant clock hung on the wall above a row of 6 video monitors. The monitors alternately showed scenes from different parts of the 30-story building. What was surprising was that the building's 3 security guards were gathered around one of the 6 monitors, shouting and slapping each other on the back. On the other 5 monitors, 24-hour security personnel viewed random scenes for a few seconds. The guards didn't hear Henry enter and continued to watch the screen, rapt, as if at a sporting event. To get their attention, he said loudly, "Hey guys, is this the Red Sox playing?" The guard closest to him turned and smiled tightly. He then walked up to the counter and stood in front of Henry, saying, "This is not the Sox, ha ha ha. How can I help you, sir? I'm waiting for my wife and would like to know if your computer system can show if she left the building. She doesn't answer her phone." The other 2 guards continued to stare at the silent screen, and Henry noticed that there were glimpses of the naked figures of 2 men and 1 woman having sex on a sofa, above which hung a large photograph of the first UNIVAC computer, but he could not see the details. He told the guard his wife's name and the name of the company she worked for. In the quiet lobby, apparently all 3 guards heard the name. They turned to Henry and loudly, in unison, asked, "What?" The tall guard took a step closer to Henry, grinning, and said, "Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Gaston, your wife is still in the building, that's for sure. But she usually leaves around 7:10 in the evenings, like today. Why don't you sit on the chair near the toilet door and wait for her, because I can't let you up without a pass." The guard looked at the large clock and noted that it was almost 7 o'clock, continuing, "Yes, they should finish in a few minutes, and she will be down in 10 minutes. At this point, the 2 men returned to the counter, and the scenes on the one monitor they were watching were now identical to those shown on the others. Henry sat down and his mind began to storm with questions. Of the approximately 2,000 people in this building, the guard knows Barbara's name. Is this an accident? How is it possible that they were secretly watching sex happening in this building? No, that doesn't make sense. Damn, there must be a lot of people here among these 2,000 workers, so it's impossible. But what is happening? Maybe they were just showing a clip from an adult movie. He calmed down after this thought. He saw his wife exit the elevator and head toward the turnstiles, and all three guards said loudly and in unison, "Good evening, Mrs. Gaston," with an irresistible grin on his face. Barbara panicked for a moment, but then smiled and returned their greeting as she walked through the turnstiles. As she approached the revolving door, her husband Henry stepped behind her and said, "Surprise, honey." Barbara turned pale and almost fainted. She would have fallen to the floor if Henry hadn't caught her when she turned and just looked at him. He handed her the roses and simply smiled. She silently opened her mouth, but could not utter a word. Finally, Henry said, "Hey, sorry I scared you. The union leader invited me out for drinks, and I asked my mother to look after the children while I met him in town. After the conversation, I decided to come here and surprise you so that we could go home together. You weren't in your seat, and your phone went straight to voicemail." When they left the building, she finally managed to choke out the words and lied. "I worked on a special project in the conference room all day and left my bag locked in my work area. I'm sorry I didn't answer. I didn't intentionally ignore you." "Oh, it's okay. I rarely go to the center, and this meeting with the union leader was a chance to settle some differences. And you look so amazing, like you just stepped off the cover of a fashion magazine. It will be nice to see the envious glances of men when we wait for our train." Feeling worse and worse, she said, "Thank you for the compliment, but I'm afraid I'm so tired I'll fall asleep as soon as I get home. Thanks for the flowers. But please don't be mad at me. I promise I'll make it up to you." During the walk, Henry had a momentary suspicion that it was Barbara on that sofa, but he decided to remain silent for now. He said, "Okay, no problem, dear wife." As they walked back to South Station, Barbara held Henry's hand tightly. In the prolonged silence, her thoughts raced. "This is pointless, bitch. Why are you having sex with two guys? What's wrong with me? I love him. I need to talk to a therapist." Henry's main thought was how to ease the tension between the workers and management at the bakery, now that he was sure that his wife was not the woman he saw on the monitor. These thoughts continued for both of them until Barbara squeezed his hand and his thoughts changed too. "What is happening to my wife? I wonder if this flexible schedule is really a good thing. Is she really busy, or is she just wasting time on unimportant tasks at the end of the day? We'll see. Next week will be a bring your child to work day. I'll bring the kids to her office and maybe find answers to my questions." On Friday, the day the children visited their parents' offices, Henry parked in a public garage and, taking both excited children by the hands, walked to the building where his wife worked. Inside, they were given guest passes and Barbara came down to escort them to her floor. There, they walked around several of her colleagues' offices, and the children enjoyed meeting other children. In one office, a father was explaining to his son how his desktop computer was connected to a large computer in the server room. Henry and Barbara's 8-year-old son asked, "Mom, I want to see the server room. Can we go there?" She replied, "I see no reason why not." And all four of them headed down to the floor below and walked towards the door of the server room, and with each step the child became more and more excited. The door was open, and next to it stood a man who greeted them. They entered a large room with several chairs and a sofa, next to which there was an empty place for the secretary. About 6 employees and about the same number of children walked and talked in the hall. The head of the IT department nodded in greeting to Barbara and greeted them all, saying, "The tour starts in 5 minutes. You can relax for now." Henry looked at the sofa, then at the artwork depicting the UNIVAC computer above it, and then at the ceiling, where a small chamber similar to the ones in the bakery jutted out slightly. Then a terrible feeling came over him because he realized that he had seen this sofa on the monitor in the security area. At this point, his children headed to the couch to sit down. Shocked and shaking, he still managed to tell them, "Hey, let's sit on this big chair and leave the sofa for others." The children followed him without protest. Barbara looked at him with a what the hell expression, but didn't say anything. When the tour began, a dozen children lined up and Henry said to his wife, "I'll stay here, if you don't mind, while you take the kids on the tour." When the room was empty except for the young guy who was now greeting guests in the server room, Henry walked up to him and asked, "Hi, you probably work the second shift, right?" The guy answered friendly, "Not me, coach. I just graduated from college a year ago and am not experienced enough yet. Evening shift is Perry and Hornbaker SR. They arrive at about 3 o'clock." Henry asked, "Are you friends with them?" "Well, Joe Perry and I went to Wentworth together, but Steve Hornbaker is an MIT graduate making big money because of my experience and background." Casually, Henry said, "Keep working, you'll get there," as he walked back to the big chair, wrote down their names, and just waited. Soon the excursion group returned, feeling deceived, because the computer class was not interesting to the children after all. So Barbara, to compensate, said, "Hey, let's have lunch in the employee cafeteria, and Dad will take you home. Anyone for lunch?" The younger one answered, "I am." So the four of them went up 5 floors to have lunch. There were other children sitting at nearby tables, and after eating, 2 of their children left the table to visit the other children. Barbara asked her husband, "You don't look very well, and you haven't had lunch. Are you feeling okay?" "Oh, I'll be fine. I just need to get home. I'm glad the kids enjoyed their visit to the office." He quickly changed the subject. On the way home, Henry said to himself, "So now you know. Sometimes at night she has sex with 2 guys. You found out that she was a party girl in college, and you were naive to think that she would be yours forever. But she is a good mother, and you want to keep your love. The family is together, and deep down you love the ugly duckling. What can you do?" By the time he pulled into his home garage, he had a plan in place. At the same time, in her office, finally alone, there was almost no work going on that Friday. Barbara was tense. She played a few computer games on the internet to pass the time until time ran out. At exactly 7 o'clock, she turned off the electricity and went to the elevator. Arriving on the first floor, the chief security guard, Leroy, introduced himself and blocked her path. After looking around to make sure there were no occupants nearby, he asked, "Can I talk to you for a moment, Miss Gaston?" Startled, she said, "What do you want to talk about?" Leroy smiled an evil smile, confident in his prey, and whispered, "We guys watch your show in the computer room while you and the technicians are having fun, and we just want to say, thanks for the fun. We're sure you'd rather have fun with us if you'd just give us a chance to show off our breakout room behind the bank of monitors. I have a sofa, and it's a great place for parties. I promise you that you will forget these guys when you attend one of our parties." "I have no idea what you're talking about, and I'm going to let you know." Leroy pulled out an electronic tablet that showed a still image of her and 2 men. He said, "Your loving husband was here Wednesday night looking for you, and if you're not ready to play with us next Wednesday at 6 o'clock, he'll get an hour-long video clip of one of your threesome parties." Barbara lost consciousness and collapsed on the floor. The 3 men began soaking paper towels and trying to get her to drink water. She regained consciousness after about 5 minutes and was helped to her feet. No one said a word, and she simply walked through the turn to go home. Once on the street, she walked to the side of the road and then vomited. She called her mother. "Mom, will you pick me up at Jamaica Plains Station? I have problems and I need to talk to you and Dad." Her mom replied, "Of course, baby. I'll be waiting." When she got to her mom's house, she picked up the landline and called her husband because she wanted Henry to be sure where she was calling from. After inquiring about their children, she asked, "Is it okay if I visit Mom for a while and you read the kids a story and kiss them goodnight from me?" Her husband saw his mother-in-law's call on the LCD and simply replied, "Of course, honey, share as much time as you need. See you later." Over the next hour, Barbara tearfully recounted her vicious fraud in great detail. and what the guards expected of her the following Wednesday night. After her vivid story, her mother asked, "Does Henry already know or suspect?" There have been no changes. He didn't complain. Her mom asked, "Do you suspect he's having an affair?" "No, Mom, and that's what makes him so sick, because he sits in an aquarium all day, and management and family breathe fire on him, and it really takes a lot of energy out of him. He never does happy hours or hangs out with guys. We can't afford it for one reason, but he is raising our kids. I think he loves me. He recently brought me flowers to work after I did a terrible thing in the computer room." Do you love your husband, Barbara? Part of me is crazy about it, but the other part of me just thinks of him as Mr. Stupid. I have serious problems, and I don't want my children to grow up in such serious conflicts. What can I do? Her father asked, "Do you think he loves you enough to be patient and help you solve your problem?" "I don't think so, Dad. He could replace me and not worry." She thought for a moment and continued, "But he wouldn't want to be a part-time dad." At the end of the hour, her father and mother took her to Henry and her home. From the street, she saw that both children's rooms were dark. Upon arrival, the three entered the lair, where Henry sat alone and played with a deck of cards. The husband said, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Fisher, the kids are already asleep, so you missed them. Can I get you some coffee or tea?" Barbara's dad said, "Maybe a glass of water. We just wanted to bring our daughter home and say hello to you. We'll go as soon as we've freshened up." Later, they were left alone. The husband sipped beer and the wife a cup of tea. There was an awkward silence at the kitchen table. Barbara's face was still white and her eyes were blood red from all the previous tears. Looking at her carefully, Henry said, "You were crying about something during an unscheduled conversation with your parents. Would you like to share it with me?" Tears streamed down her face again as she remembered her mother's advice and asked, "Does our health insurance policy cover psychiatrist consultations?" "Yes, I'm pretty sure that's true. But do you think a therapist will help, or did you just hear this somewhere?" She replied, "I don't know, but I just need help, and going to our pastor is out of the question." Henry responded with hatred, "I'm just the father of our children, so sharing yours with me problem is out of the question, right?" She jumped up and ran to the bathroom, but soon returned, apparently having washed her face. She said, "I don't want to lose you, and I don't want you to hate me, but I've been cheating on you for the last 3 months. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry. I want to go to a therapist to understand why I do this and get my thoughts in order." Looking her straight in the eye and taking a long pause, he asked, "Why are you telling me this now? Why not 3 months ago or a year ago if you were already thinking about cheating then?" She continued, "At work, the building security guards watched me have sex with two computer scientists through one of the CCTV cameras. The head of security wants me to sleep with them and threatens to blackmail me if I don't agree." He asked, "When did this happen?" "I was just confronted with this tonight, and I fainted from all the conflict and guilt. That's why I unexpectedly went to talk to my dad and mom. And yes, I told them everything." "Barbara, it's not like I'm not satisfying you sexually. Why did you start cheating? Did you fall in love with one of these guys?" "No, these two technicians are just for fun." "Did you use protection?" "Yes. When I finish my workday, I clean myself up before returning home, as you may have noticed. I always knew, just by the way you had become cold towards me over the past months, that something was wrong between us. Why did you decide to change? Are you sure you're not in love with one or both of these guys?" "No, this is absurd. I just wanted to have fun one night, and these guys are real party animals. From 5:30 to 7 o'clock, there was no one in the office except the three of us, and I did it for laughs and fun, but now I regret it. Please don't leave me to raise our children alone. I will pretend not to notice if you decide to cheat on me. Just stay with me until the younger one leaves home. Please?" "Barbara, I'm moving into the third bedroom for the night until I decide what to do. Please make an appointment with your primary care physician and get a referral to a psychotherapist or other specialist if the physician finds no physical problems. I don't want to become a part-time dad either, not to mention how it affects the kids. I'll assume that you're telling me the truth. Now there haven't been and aren't any other men in the last 10 years. No, from now on there will be no one else while you live in this house. The fact that I married you was the main prize for me. I just want to understand why I am drawn to such actions from time to time. I honestly don't know why. I love you so much. Henry stopped himself from going over and hugging his wife, but simply said, "Let's find out why this happened, and I promise I'll work with you on it." Both were exhausted and went to sleep in separate rooms after he kissed her goodnight on the cheek. The following Wednesday at 7 p.m., the elevator doors opened and Barbara walked out to 3 security guards. She had a smile on her face that lit up the day for all 3 of them for a moment. She then handed Leroy a piece of paper and said, "Leroy, here is my husband's email address. He is looking forward to the video clip you are going to send him. Have a nice day, guys." She walked through the turnstiles and exited the building as the 3 guards looked at her in confusion. Finally, Leroy said to the others, "You think this bitch is bluffing?" The youngest replied, "Since nothing happened in the server room today, maybe she told those guys bye, and that was the end of it. I think we should forget about all this and find another girl. This building is full of women of easy virtue." 2 weeks after that, Henry returned from work and took care of the children while he prepared dinner. He discovered that a voice message had been left on his home phone. He played it back. "This message is for Barbara Gaston. This is Dr. S's office. He has asked me to tell you that your hormonal test results have come back, and you have a severe imbalance in 5 of your body's hormones and a mild imbalance in 4 others. Please call to schedule an appointment with Dr. D for evaluation and treatment." Henry smiled and wondered if he should go back to the master bedroom. In the end, he decided to wait until he knew the results of his meeting with the doctor. Meanwhile, he was playing with the children outside after dinner. Her health insurance gave her the opportunity to make an appointment with a GP on Friday afternoon at their office in the suburbs, not far from the bakery where Henry worked. She sat for a long time in the crowded waiting room, and finally she was called into the office. The doctor introduced himself, and after the older doctor pulled up her blood test results on the computer, the first thing he said was, "I'm guessing you're leading a busy life if your numbers mean anything, Mrs. Gaston." Barbara was shocked and at first could not find words, while the old doctor, taking off his glasses, quietly chewed on their frame, waiting for an answer. The wife whispered, "Yes, ma'am, but not anymore." "Does your husband know?" "Yes, he moved into the guest room. He behaves politely with me, but after he found out 3 weeks ago, he practically does not communicate. He stays for the sake of the children. I will write you 3 prescriptions for expensive and powerful drugs that we use to normalize 5 hormones. You should feel the results within 48 hours. Take them exactly as directed." Barbara asked, "Are there any foods or drinks that I should avoid or consume while I wait for the medications to take effect?" The doctor said, "No, Mrs. Gaston, I assume you love your husband, otherwise you wouldn't be so upset. Based on this, I will write a conclusion about our meeting and indicate there that research on hormonal disorders of this kind shows that they can cause tension, periodic strong desire for sex, and difficulty concentrating at work. I suggest you show the report to the doctor and tell him that you love him and intend to never do this again. If you do not love your husband, then you should discuss the possibility of divorce with him. That's all you can do. Make a follow-up appointment in a month so we can see how you respond to treatment." "Fine." They shook hands and the patient said, "Thank you very much, doctor. Before you go, Mrs. Gaston, you will need to control and moderate your desire to have sex, even after your hormones return to normal. Consider yourself lucky that your husband is not jealous, but maybe you won't be so lucky after the next incident or with another man in your life." Barbara walked up to the front desk in a state of shock and paid for the visit while the administrator printed out her prescriptions and conclusion of the visit. After getting into the car, she called her husband and left him a voice message. I have some amazing information from a doctor that I want to share with you. Today, I'll pick up the kids and cook us dinner at home. Henry was in the coup's office early and learned that he was being promoted with a 10% salary increase. He would have more employees under him at the same salary. He felt his phone vibrate during their meeting. After it was over, he listened to his voicemail and then returned to the operations manager's office and said, Fred, I'll be joining you guys for one happy hour to celebrate since my wife is on duty today. Child care. What time will you be there? Hey, I'll leave early today, say at 3. The bar near your house is the Flying Alligator. Do you know it? Yes, I was there once. See you guys there. He left Barbara a message. Thank you for fulfilling your child's duty. First, having a drink at Gator with Fred and others. Second, at 4 I come home. Please save my dinner. Barbara was an incredibly good mother until she smiled and became a perfect role model in their presence. The three danced and played mostly in the backyard. When she entered the house to prepare dinner, she could still hear their dog running and barking at the children. This brought a smile to her face. She had already taken one dose of the pills and swore she felt the tension inside her ease. She also focused on her husband and was very confident that she could get him back. After dinner was ready, she began setting it on the table before calling the kids and putting her husband's plate in the refrigerator when she heard the garage door open. She ran to the kitchen door leading to the garage, the printout from the doctor's office in hand, to wait for him. The moment he opened the door to the kitchen, she walked up and, with a big smile on her face, gave a report on that afternoon's doctor's appointment. Please read this before you say or do anything, kids playing in the backyard. Henry was shocked that she would stand in his way like that, but he stopped and just stared at her. He said, "Okay," and took the piece of paper from her. He looked at one paragraph first, then put the briefcase aside and began to study it. He then acted shy and ignored the printout. He looked at her and said, "I'm terribly hungry. Is dinner ready?" "Yes. Please bring the kids who are playing in the backyard and make sure they wash their hands, and you too, while I put food on the table now." At dinner, the two adults were silent while the children chatted amiably about their day. Henry's eyes rarely strayed from his wife's, and he was surprised that both of them had regained their appetites. After dinner, she announced to the children, "You have 1 hour to play on the iPad in the living room starting now," as they watched their mother set a timer. After they left the table, Henry said quietly, "Please tell me what exactly was said in the doctor's office." She said, "Paraphrasing as best I can, I said, I spend a hell of a lot of time focusing on work during the day, and I get sexual urges from time to time, and my muscles are tight most of the day, and I have very dry skin leather." The doctor was an older woman who immediately said she assumed I was having an affair just based on the blood test results. She then said, "The 3 prescriptions are designed to balance some of my hormones, and I can already feel the tension reduced. I love you so much, Henry. Please forgive me and let me make amends." She also said, "Will I go out in the future or not? It's up to me, even though the medications make me less inclined to do it. If you love me again, Henry, what I did not happen in the future, please forgive me. Barbara, I forgive you for cheating because it didn't mean anything, but I'm worried that in the long run you'll get tired of being tied to your blue-collar husband and remember the world of those prodigies. Can you and I continue to be happy if deep down you really want a witty and charming gentleman in your bed, even if you did not go through with your divorce from me and married such a man?" She replied, "I have never met such a gentleman, supposing they exist, but if I meet and I'll be attracted to one, only then can this question be answered. This may not be the usual answer, but I'm done with the lies and that's it. I can tell you for sure." Henry thought for a minute and said, "Of course, you're right. No one can think about what he cannot even imagine. But we need to love and raise these children in a way that makes adult happiness possible for them, and that trumps the other options open to any of us, doesn't it? And what will happen next in our relationship, dear husband?" "Barbara, I want to continue to be who we are while I try to process what you told me and try to be sure that I still love you. And more importantly, do I believe that the different and sweet Barbara will become my wife? And if you again find me the interesting person you first married, then we will have a chance. For now, let's see how you respond to the medicine in the next few days, okay? Fine. Thank you for not yelling at me or worse when you found out about this. I am so lucky, and the kids are so lucky. Just watch me turn into the person you won't think of leaving no matter what. Later, Henry lay in bed trying to sleep, thinking about the evening when he heard Barbara read 2 stories to the children and put them to bed. He said to himself, "What a bad marriage you have." Henry fell asleep. 3 weeks later, Henry spent the first day of a 2-day meeting in a conference room at a downtown Boston hotel for a management meeting. His colleagues from all of the company's bakeries in the New England region were in attendance. It started with a welcoming speech from the CEO, and then the breakout committees went into various small breakout rooms. Henry's group was introducing new automated equipment that would likely complicate labor relations more than before. The 8 managers in the room shouted at each other until they had to leave. He was exhausted, but returned to his room to lie down. After resting, he called his mother, who picked up the children after school and took them to his and his wife's home. After greetings and some comments about the school day, he said, "Since I'll be spending the night at this hotel, are you sure you don't mind staying the night so I can ask Barbara to spend the night with me in my hotel room?" "Oh, son, please, I pray every day that you will break down this wall between you. Besides, I took you and your sister to school for many years and did a good job of it. Your children will be fine, and I'm glad to be able to look after my grandchildren. You and Barbara have fun and don't worry about what's going on here." Henry freshened up and put on a clean shirt. He was hungry and really wanted to surprise his wife by meeting her in the lobby of the building where she worked. He even hoped that a flower shop was still open so he could buy her flowers. At approximately 6:45, he again approached the security desk, where, as before, 3 guards did not notice his approach and were watching the monitor, loudly hooting and encouraging each other. The same sofa on which there were 3 naked bodies was again visible on the screen. Henry stood quietly, barely holding back tears, and then shouted, "Security." The tall guard turned and tried to recall who was standing in front of him. The visitor said, "I feel bad. Give me the key to your toilet." At that moment, Leroy remembered who Henry was and, writing down the code for the door, said, "Don't worry, man. Your wife doesn't participate in these parties in the computer room anymore. These 2 guys have now found a young girlfriend, and on other days she agreed to have fun with us. Your wife should be down at 7 o'clock sharp if you want to wait another 10 minutes. Hearing this, Henry's insides turned upside down, and for a moment it seemed to him that he had returned to a time when he had not yet known a single worry. He even smiled widely at the tall guard. The elevator doors opened at exactly 7 o'clock, and Barbara walked out with quick, confident steps. She smiled at the guards and said, "Good evening, guys." She was surprised that they did not answer, but simply smiled back at her. After passing through the turnstiles, she saw her husband waiting for her to the side, noticing that he looked calm and relaxed. She stopped in disbelief, because this was only the second time he had met her here after work in all this time. Henry offered her his hand and said, "Would you like to spend a wild and exciting evening with me, lady?" Looking over her shoulder at the 3 guards with a smile on her face, she whispered, "All day I dreamed that you would invite me to dinner because I knew you had a meeting at the hotel on Atlantic Avenue. Thank you. Thank you. Have you checked how the kids are doing?" He answered her when they went outside, "Yes, dear lady, I checked. Mom will be happy to look after the children that night, spend the night with us, and take them to school in the morning. Do you want to spend the night with me at the hotel?" She stopped, feeling her heart about to burst out of her chest with excitement, and said jokingly, "I'll have to sleep naked since I didn't bring a nightgown with me." "Oh, that's completely normal. I took the liberty of secretly bringing you clean underwear from home, but you will have to wear the same dress to work tomorrow. Can you handle this? After about 10 minutes of chatting on the street in front of her building, the young woman slowly walked out through the revolving door, ending her work day. Barbara pointed at her and said, "She's a temp in the accounting department who helps the guys in the server room. But she is unmarried. Better her than me." Once again, life was wonderful for both of them. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next